All right, so we've covered the vertebra general features. We went over the cervical vertebra, that there are 7. We know what the atlas looks like. We know what the axis looks like. We know what transverse foramen look like. And we know what costal facets are. The only other thing we need to know about thoracic vertebra is that there are 12 of them, and that makes sense because each pair of ribs attached to this thoracic vertebra. There are 12 pairs of ribs, there are 12 thoracic vertebrae, therefore there is a costal facet on each side of the vertebra to attach the ribs. Lumbar vertebra, all we need to know is that there are 5 of them. Okay? L1 through L5, T1 through T12, C1 through C7. All right? So what comes below the lumbar vertebra? It is something called the sacrum. And I will grab a sacrum for us. Here's the sacrum right here. L5 right up on top of there. Bam, just like this. Here are the articulating process. Here are the inferior articulating process, and bam, it sits right there like that. And of course, what would be in between here? Intervertebral discs. Okay, so this is the next guy in line. If you actually stick it on, looks like a Klingon forehead. All right, 5 fused bones. This is a plastic one, so there's a couple things you won't be able to see on this one. Make sure you understand that the sacrum makes up the pelvic girdle. You have a right os cox, a left os cox. It is held by a band of fibrocartilage in the anterior position, and there is a rough auricular surface on the ilium, and the sacrum itself has a rough surface. And here's the rough auricular surface of the sacrum. So basically, the right pelvic bone goes over here, the left one on this side, forming the pelvic girdle. Just like that. Okay? So one of the things that we are trying to look at, other than the auricular surface, is the sacral canal. And as you can see, there is no sacral canal because this is plastic. You have to get a real set of bones, and here's the sacral canal right in there. Sacral canal. The other feature is the ala, the wing. You can take your hand and grab the right ala and grab the left ala. It is the 2 alas that articulate via the rough auricular surface to the ilium or the os cox. The right side of the ilium and the left side of the ilium. Again, forming the pelvic girdle. This is the iliac crest right here, the rough auricular surface of the os cox articulating with that one. Below the sacrum is the coccyx, right here. 4 fused bones, and another name for this is your tailbone. If you break that one, it takes forever to heal because you're always sitting, you're always laying on it. All right, going to bring you guys over to the skeleton. So if you're motion sickness, all right, here we go. We're over here. Let me zoom in. All right. Okay. I'm going to go get my book. All right, starting with the sternum. The sternum it's made up of 3 sections. The middle section, the sternum itself, the top part called the manubrium, and down here the xiphoid process. So the body, the manubrium, and the xiphoid process. Obviously, it's the xiphoid process that has any medical significance, because when you are feeling along the ribs to find the xiphoid process, you want to take 3 fingers and do your chest compressions there. You don't want to snap that off on anybody. But anyway, that is the sternum. It is the anterior connection for the rib cage. Anterior meaning front. So the ribs all attach to the sternum one of 2 ways. Either directly, as is with ribs pairs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Your first 7 pairs of ribs are called true ribs or vertebral sternal. Vertebral because in the back all of the ribs articulate with one of the thoracic vertebrae, hence the word vertebral. The first 7 pairs articulate directly via cartilage to the sternum. All right? To the sternum. And why do we have to have cartilage here? Why do we have to have cartilage here? Well, it's important because the ribs need to be able to expand and compress without breaking any bones. And this costal cartilage, and the reason they call it costal cartilage because it's on the coast of your sternum. Okay? Well, what about the other pairs of ribs? Well, pairs 8, 9, and 10 right here have what is called an indirect connection. 1, 2, 3, they meet right here and have common cartilage. That common cartilage then attaches to the sternum. So we call these vertebral chondral ribs. Chondral referring to cartilage. And these are known as false ribs. So true ribs, pairs 1 through 7, pairs 8, 9, and 10, false ribs. And then the last 2 pairs, 11 and 12, are called the vertebral ribs. Vertebral ribs, I have to turn him sideways, move his arm out of the way, are these 2 ribs right here. They have no anterior connection. They only articulate with the thoracic vertebra, hence the word vertebral ribs. Now, they used to be called floating ribs. They are now referred to as the second pair of false ribs. But I think it's probably okay. I think a lot of physicians still refer them to the floating ribs. A lot of physiologists still refer them to as floating ribs. Okay? Makes it easy to memorize them. True ribs, false ribs, floating ribs. All right? Okay. We turn the page and we've already filled out that box right there, posterior condyle mandibular fossa. We've identified C1 and C2 and how they articulate with each other. We then looked at the superior and inferior articulating process, and we know what a cervical vertebra looks like. It's going to have 3 holes. The thoracic vertebra is going to have a small body, and the spinous process points down. And the lumbar vertebrae are going to have huge bodies or centrums, and the spinous process points straight back. All right. Take a look at those throughout your book. Our next lab, lab number 5, will be on the appendicular skeleton. And what we're going to be primarily concerned with is on page 2930, or yours is 3738. We're going to get all these boxes filled in. And we're going to talk about how all of these bones come up and form joints, which we call articulations. Okay? For your purposes, you will need to know all of the bones on page 27 and 28, bones of the cervical collarbone, scapula, different parts of the scapula. We're not going to do that in lab. That's just grunt, look it up, identify it. But as we go through our articulations, and one of the things I'm going to do with you is show you how to be able to tell the difference between right and left 4 bones: scapula, humerus, os cox, and femur. I will show you how to be able to figure out which is a left one, which is a right one. All right. Be able to distinguish or be able to describe bone markings that form articulations or joints, and basically we'll go more into detail. Basically what's going to happen for that section, they're going to show you a scapula like this, and they're going to say what bone articulates here. Of course, that's the humerus. But watch how they ask the question, what bone articulates here? It's the humerus bone. Or they could say, what is the articulation point on the bone that articulates here? Well, that's the head of the humerus. So you always have the bone that articulates at a certain spot, or the other articulation point. Now, this articulation point on the scapula is called the glenoid fossa, and we're going to learn that. So the glenoid fossa of the scapula articulates with the head of the humerus, and we're going to follow that all the way down to the tails. We're going to be saying the blank of the blank articulates with the blank of the blank. All right. So I don't feel like doing that tonight, so I'll probably get that one done next Wednesday. And I guess we are done with this. So short little video to finish us up.